So we are here today with Michelle Markwart Deveaux, and she is a business strategist, personal development and mindset coach, author, speaker, and CEO of FaithCultureKiss Studios, LLC. She is the founder of the Speakeasy Cooperative, and she teaches singers, actors, podcasters, and influencers to use their voice physically and metaphorically. Michelle revels in the nitty-gritty of entrepreneurship, business shenanigans, and personal development. She likes accounting, but does not like math in public. I don't blame her. She's been featured on podcasts such as What Works, Rebel Therapist, The Women's Advocate, Dr. Dan's Voice Essentials, Expand Online, Vocal Fry, The Naked Vocalist, This is a Voice, the Voice Culture Podcast, Your Creative GPS, and is a regular contributor to The Full Voice. Michelle has led seminars for Vocology in Practice International, the USA NATS organization, national, regional, and chapter levels, Vocology in Practice, University of Utah, Utah State University, New England Conservatory, Missouri State University, San Francisco Conservatory, the What Works Network, the Unstoppable Singer, Unfuckwithable Girlfriends, I like that one already, the Women's Networking Alliance, and Expand Online. Degrees? Sure. BA in Music from Patton University, MA in Worship, Theology, and the Arts from Fuller Theological Seminary. She cut formal education teeth at the University of Northern Colorado in musical theater and vocal performance. She's trained in numerous coaching modalities and is a Gallup certified Clifton Strengths coach. Based in Rancho Cordova, California, Michelle and her husband are raising their two amazing kiddos to be deep thinkers and strong leaders through careful study of the Fugees, Star Trek, and the MCU. Michelle Markwart Deveaux hates writing her bio, but she likes telling her story. She knows you need to know that the Speakeasy Cooperative offers coaching and consulting programs for people who run voice and voice-adjacent businesses, along with one-to-one session work, live events, and high-level masterminds. You can learn more at thespeakeasycooperative.com. Thank you for joining me today, Michelle. I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
I'm very thankful to be here. Feel free to cut that 3-minute bio. I'm listening to it. I'm like, well, this is obnoxious. Way too long.
It's great. It gives a really full background for you.
It does, but it's good. It's good that you read it because those are usually print bios, and it's like, oh, yeah. I should. You're giving me a great idea.
Yeah.
That one your listeners can take with is like, make sure you also have
the soundbite bio.
The soundbite bio, which I did not provide you because I forgot to provide you with the bio until just now.
We roll with it. But you know what? I know that when I started this podcast, I had to come up with my soundbite bio, which is a far cry from my written bio. And it is very different. It is a very different thing trying to craft that too.
Yeah, totally. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Well,
I'll just add it to my list of to-dos.
So do you want to tell us your story? Is there anything else we need to flesh out for listeners who may not have been introduced to you before? A bit about your journey?
Well, I mean, the people who are listening to this are artists and they're performers. And I would say, of course, you are a business. Mm-hmm. And I wish that I had, in terms of journey, I wish that I would have figured that out way earlier than I did. And I still figured it out earlier than a lot of other people comparatively. But I wish that when I would have started making money in my teens, singing and gigging and getting roles and all of that, I really wish someone would have pulled me aside and said, congratulations, you just got paid. You are now a business and a professional. And it took a long while. And so, you know, the bios sound fancy. They make us look good. They make us sound like we've done a lot of stuff, but they leave out all of the mistakes and they leave out the learning.
Yeah.
And so I would say, like, if you don't know me, I'm just like you. I'm a person who started to get paid to share their art and figured out a little too late that, like, oh, I got to get some smarts around this, because I spent a lot of time learning how to do my art real well.
Yeah.
And I learned it in a community that shied away from having money conversations.
I think that's really common in art.
Yeah, considered it selling out if you purposely made money. Like, oh, but you have to do it for the art. I'm like, I gotta do it for my bills. Like, and my art.
Struggling and starving is not super romantic.
Yeah, and it's so funny because, in terms of journey, how much pushback I got as an artist.
Yeah.
Because we are so conditioned to feel like being wealthy and making money is mutually exclusive from being a creative and being an artist.
Yeah.
And that is like a big old lie that has been thrust upon all artists from film and television to performance art to visual art. And that is why we have starving artists. So yeah, my journey is about breaking free of that mentality to the point where I was like, I got out of the bucket. I got out of the bucket of crabs, and I'm going to like hang over the side and start pulling crabs out with me,
Preach it, sister.
It's not very specific, but that's what I do.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So you have this like magic background of being a singer, teaching voice users, and being a business and personal development coach. So I thought it would be pretty awesome to talk with you today about that whole concept of exactly that: artists as entrepreneurs, artists as businesses. I personally coach a lot of signed artists and aspirational artists, and what I see a lot of in my studio is like a big musical chops, but this huge void when it comes to any kind of business chops. And there's this hope or expectation that seems to go along with that somebody else is going to do that part of it for them. Somebody else is going to take care of the business things. And I think that can be really damaging in the long run, especially when artists are young and they don't yet know the ways that they can get taken advantage of. So do you want to talk a bit about that concept in the larger sense and the importance of artists sort of knowing some business basics?
Yeah. So what I want to reflect back is that when you are a signed artist and when you get to a certain level, it is actually true that you will pass off some of these tasks and projects and jobs to other people because you won't have time to do them. And that's not working in your zone of genius. But what I am consistently mortified by right alongside with you is that somehow means that we don't have to know about it. And you cannot hire the correct business manager. You cannot hire the correct agent or manager or tour leader or coordinator, rather. I was like, what is that called?
Yeah.
You cannot hire the people that will up-level you on your team unless you know what the hell you're hiring for.
Yeah.
And you're not going to know that unless you understand some basic business concepts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And get real comfortable with yourself being a business. Because let's not lie, friends. You can just, I don't care about money. I just want to be famous. Lies. That's not true. You absolutely do care about money. Unless you are in a privileged position where you do not need to worry about money.
Yeah.
But if you're not caring about money, then if someone says to me, oh, I'm an artist, I don't care about money. I'm like, okay, see you never.
Yeah.
Because you're in denial. You are in denial about what it is going to take for you to reach a level of success that you desire to reach.
Yeah. It costs
a lot of money.
There's a big cost to, like a financial cost,
yes,
to achieving success.
Absolutely. And it manifests in so many different ways, from travel to your wardrobe to all of the nitty-gritty of putting together an album and a tour. And yeah, you might get signed and have someone else fund that for you. But when you're starting out, you're doing that all on your own.
Yeah.
And so you got to know how to read a profit and loss statement. You have to know how to do bookkeeping. You have to understand the concepts of accounting.
Yeah.
So that you can talk to an accountant and, be paying the correct amount of taxes, and have your accountant tell you how you can save some on your taxes. And you have to understand how to negotiate a contract with a venue.
Yeah.
You have to get real comfortable with viewing yourself as a product that you are selling and marketing.
Yeah.
And therefore, you've got to separate your identity from this business entity. Like, you are not your entity.
Yeah.
And I think that gets really tricky for artists, because we get all up in our feels.
Yep.
We get all up in our feels and it's the zeitgeist, right? It's the myth. Oh, this art came from my soul. And yeah, it might have, but what are you going to do with that thing after? How are you going to market it? How are you going to hire the people that do your cover art? How are you going to fund the project? All of that.
And I mean, the Beyoncés and the Taylor Swifts of the world, they are making their art.
Yeah.
But you cannot tell me that they are not also viewing their art as a product and looking like really point blank at the saleability of their art.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant businesswomen who have teams to help them be more brilliant in their business.
Yeah.
I mean, I whether you like them or hate them, I admire so deeply Jay-Z and Beyonce's business acumen. It is astonishing how wise they are around their brand. And it is also very clear how much weight they feel running their brands.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you following Beyonce since Destiny's Child, right?
Yes, I did.
So it's interesting to also kind of, from a media perspective, kind of see her grow into that separation of identity from the art as an artist into a mogul. Yeah. And I mean, I wish that for all of us. May we all mogul.
Indeed. I think that is our new peace prayer.
Yeah.
May we all mogul.
I love it.
So from a business and personal coaching point of view, what kind of mindset pieces do you think artists really need to intentionally address for their own growth from a business perspective? And do you have thoughts about how they can approach change in these areas?
Yeah. So we kind of touched on it in that last one, which I know was supposed to be practical things, but they're so intertwined. You can't.
They really are.
It's funny because with our company, one of our taglines is personal development that leads to professional development, because it is intertwined. If you don't, you will always succeed to the level of your emotional readiness. And you will always fail in relation to where you stepped over your emotional readiness.
Yep.
And the failing isn't bad. I'm not setting that up as failure as it's bad. I'm just saying that's where you're going to learn where you need some growth. So specifically, I would say absolutely money. We have to have better conversations about money. We have to demystify how money works, the history of money, what the role of money is in exchange in the Western cultures that we live in. I'm assuming your audience is in a Western culture
I think so, yeah.
But and in relatively capitalist or democratic capitalism, we have to understand what that actually means and how that affects music economics and art economics. I don't think we have to take a PhD level course on it, but I think understanding economics as a principle, microeconomics and the way people buy, pricing psychology, all of that, consumerism, like you just got to know a little bit about what goes into why people buy shit.
Yeah.
And you have to get comfortable around your own money and unpack the stories you've been told about money, especially the starving artist mindset and that thing we were talking about earlier, where it's like, finding value in being poor as though that makes you more of a purist. Unpacking our generational narratives around money.
Yeah.
What we should be doing it, shouldn't be doing with it. Unpacking how we feel about people who do have money and our own biases against wealth.
And that's a real thing.
Yeah, it is. And, many, many artists, we are feeling beings. And when we're constantly getting messages of how wealth causes harm instead of messages of how wealth creates good, we are the kind of people that don't want to create harm. Like we want to create beauty. We want to create space for health and growth and healing. And it often leaves people's minds in a place where beauty and wealth are mutually exclusive instead of mutually inclusive, just because of the narrative around kind of hyper wealth, right? Understanding how much you actually need, understanding math, all of that. I really think it's a really big mindset thing that has to be addressed.
Yeah.
You can do this through reading books. You can get a coach like me or a money coach. I wouldn't jump to a financial advisor unless you have money to be advised on, because that's a specific thing about like what you're going to do with retirement and investments and all of that. So unless you're at the place where you're ready to do that, like maybe you do have some money coming in, then you can see financial advisor. But the mindset stuff, books, coaching groups, one-on-one coaching, there are amazing money mindset coaches out there, or coaches like in our company that have that available. And then talking to your friends, like not being afraid to be like, hey, I need to talk to you about this gig, and surround yourself with people who have normalized higher numbers.
Yes.
Than you are comfortable with. So if you think $300 is good for a gig, find some people who think $1,000 is good for a gig. If you think $1,000 is good for a gig, find some people who think $8,000 is right for a gig. If you think $8,000, find the bands that play the $30,000 and $50,000 corporate gigs. Like level up who you hang out with too. Scarcity mindset is another mindset thing that I would really like everyone, but artists especially, to deal with. And I do actually see that differently than starving artist. To me, scarcity is more ubiquitous and it infiltrates many other areas in addition to money. So yes, scarcity is an economic principle. That is true. It is usually a financial principle, but scarcity manifests in how you feel about yourself in the market, so who your air quotes competition is. Scarcity shows up when you find yourself having other artists around you that you feel do the same thing or something similar to you, and you feel worried that you're not going to get your, again, air quotes, piece of the pie. And that causes you to make decisions out of fear. So why scarcity mindset has to be dealt with is because it sets you in a perpetual state of making decisions out of lack and out of scarcity instead of making decisions out of being strategic, or as some people like to say, abundance, and assuming the best, what could go right. Where if you find yourself kind of always like saying, you say yes to gigs that you should never say yes to, you say yes and then you find out the scope of the gig has changed and you still say yes instead of walking away, like it's this fear of missing out. And so I would say definitely catch yourself. When am I making a decision based on fear of missing out versus that kind of excited anticipatory fear of doing something new, which is probably not actually fear. That's probably, it's the same chemical. Your amygdala is going to do the same thing. But one of them.
I love the term that you use actually is nerve-sighted.
Yeah, nerve-sighted, right? That's exactly, yes, you're nerve-sighted. So you like know something's coming, like what if this did go right, and you're excited rather than I have to do this, I should do this. And then noticing that in yourself. And some of this stuff is therapy, friends.
Yeah, it's true.
Some of this stuff, I mean, thank God therapy is more normalized now and talking about mental health now than it was when I was years old, right? Like very long time ago. But get thee to people who are going to help you work this out so that you can catch yourself in your patterns.
Yeah.
Because people who are successful, like the key to success is being able to be self-aware enough to recognize your bullshit patterns and get out of your way, your own way. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. And not unrelated to what you just said, I just want to mention that I have sat through you teaching on the concept of figuring out your own hourly rate and like how you come to that from a completely different starting point than most people, like most of us, whether it's, I mean, I know the context I sat through it was a group of voice teachers. So we were looking at it from a teaching perspective, but 100% you could do the same thing in a group of performers. And most people start with, what does everybody else charge?
Exactly.
And your point is that's the last thing you ask.
The
first thing you ask is, what do I need to make? And then how do I create that?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's very short form. But
yeah. That's a very practical thing, is learning how to price.
Yeah.
A company, we tend to come to pricing based on how much do I think I could make. And I think that's a valid question to have on the table in the decision-making process, but that is certainly not the question that should be leading that process. The question that leads, as you said, in my belief, is how much must you earn in order to live your best life?
Yep.
And that is what is enough. And for some people, that's going to be $7 million a year. And for some people, that's going to be $55,000 a year. And for some people, that's going to be $24,000 a year. Or 300. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. The number is not the point. And this is where we go back to like principles. It's like you have to use love and data to figure out what you're going to sell your merch for example. Love and data to figure out how much it's going to cost and what your timeline is for getting your albums out. And we start with, a budget.
Yeah.
How much does my life cost? And that includes, what do I want to share with others? What do I want to give? What do I want to save? It includes what you want to save.
Yeah.
Whether that's retirement.
When you need.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, retirement, holidays at Christmas time, whatever.
Right. Fuck you fund. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to give away? What are you going to save? What are you going to spend? Think about what you're going to spend. Like, really,
what are you going to spend?
And what do you want to spend? Because here's the other thing too, right? Yeah. Is we self-edit when we budget. We're like, oh, well, I just shouldn't go to Starbucks every day. And I'm like, friend, if that culture of like going to the coffee shop, doesn't have to be Starbucks, but going to the coffee shop, sitting down with your computer, having your earphones on with the bustle of the cafe around you and like, pumping out some beats there before you go home and listen to it on your system. And that costs you $5 a day. Don't you dare take away your Starbucks budget. It's got to be in there. Yeah. You got to account for it, right? And I always like round up because it's better to have more money than you need than less money. You can always put in savings. And then you will know how much you have to earn. And then when you know how much you have to earn, then you can figure out how much you want to work. Then you can figure out these numbers. Like if I want to do 7 gigs a month and I want to earn $700, then each of those gigs has to pay me at least $100. Please don't take only $100 for a gig. But that was easy math because, again, as my bio said, no math in public. We make it easy here. That's why we have spreadsheets and calculators, friends, and accountants. So,
but what I loved when I sat through this planning process with you is that, I mean, some of it was familiar ground for me and some of it was new ways of looking at things or different orders of looking at things. And what it really brought me up against was that piece of scarcity mindset. Am I worth what I need to make? And that's where it intersected for me was, my being able to own my own value in that. And I think that is a piece that artists, especially younger artists, can really struggle with, that feeling like, I don't know if I'm worth asking for more.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because this is a really big mindset shift that I've had, and it goes to this practical application of treating yourself like a business. I no longer believe in the concept of charging what you're worth. And it is because you can never charge as much as you are worth. You can't. You are too valuable. You are too inherently important. You are too inherently grounded. You are too inherently connected. No one, nowhere could ever afford your worth. So it is dumb to try to charge it because even Bezos can't. And this idea of charging what we're worth, I think, is actually kind of this patriarchal, backward trick that is especially forced upon women around making sure you feel good about yourself before you're allowed to make enough money.
Ooh.
And I just call bullshit on that.
Yeah.
And and that is a change. Like I used to be a big, like, no, like that's how I presented it. It was like, charge what you're worth. You are valuable. You this. And I've really gone through a big shift over this because we are tiny micro businesses, small businesses in the United States. The Small Business Administration says a small business is any business with less than 500 employees and making $7 million a year annually or yes. So most of us...
I qualify.
Yeah, I qualify. So most of us are in the micro business, which is less than $1 million or $2 million a year and like a team of maybe five or less, right? So if you're your own person, you don't have a team, yet you're a micro business probably at this stage. And I think that's one of the ways that we get stuck in not viewing ourselves as a business, because a business does not care what other people think about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have feelings. It's an entity. It is not a person, so much as like the tax code would like to try to convince us. But, we'll just leave that there on the table for later discussion. But this idea of charging what you're worth, I'm like, you just can't. And, let's just call it like it is. There is modern day slavery. There is sex trafficking. And you might need to put a content warning on this. I didn't think to say that.
I put content warning on every episode of this show.
Because I didn't want to accidentally bring up something without thinking it through. And then I've recently learned through a friend discussing this is that the adoption community as well, that we are literally buying and selling human bodies still in 2023. And putting monetary value on that. And like, come on, are we those people? Are we the people that want to perpetuate that with our art?
Yeah, no.
And so I don't mean to challenge what you're saying directly, but in an awkward way, just
no, challenge away.
Something just more that like, what if that wasn't even part of the conversation? Because then what do I do if I'm having a great day? I'm sorry, today's voice lesson or today's gig is $17,000 because I feel fucking fantastic. And then what about on the day where I feel like shit? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel very good, so you only have to pay $5 for this gig. That makes no sense. That doesn't pay your bills.
No, that is not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. And it's really messy accounting. So
yes, it is.
So practically speaking, Matt, love and data. And the love part is like, what is your brand? What is your brand capital? What is your business model? Like, are you in a place where you want to do a ton of gigs because you want to get yourself out there and you're just cranking through the circuit? You're going to have a high volume model. And so you're probably going to take a little bit less, but do it on purpose. Do it because this is a season of 6 months that I just want to crank through gigs so I can get my name out there and my audience and build up things. I'm going to use it. I'm going to take video and do the social, like turn it into a marketing campaign. And sure, take your $100 a gig, take your 200 or your $1,000 a gig. But you're going to get to a point where you're like, I can only sustain 10 gigs a month.
Right.
But I still need to make $500,000 a year. What's that math? And by the time you're making $500,000, you're not paying just you.
Right. You are definitely
paying for a team, which is why you have to make $500,000. I think that's another misunderstanding that artists have when they're first starting out is that they don't understand your role. They don't understand that their role will also include management, like managing a team, hiring and firing. And you turn into a CEO of a company. And that is something you need to get comfortable around. Like you're in charge. You're making the decisions. And you want to get counsel, you want to get mentorship, you want to bring people to help you, but to like stick your fingers in your ears and like let other people handle it. I mean, that's how we get like the Schitt's Creek story, right? Is like, we're going to let other people handle it and then all the money's gone,
Exactly.
I mean, and we see those stories in the media all the time.
I have had people on the show where I, interviewed people where their managers didn't file their taxes and stole their money, and their management didn't see it happening either. And they spent years paying that back, and, like big bands
and
big bands.
You have to know what questions to ask.
Yes.
And here's the thing. I'm not saying, because I get it. The artist persona is that you are the artist, and like sometimes your brand requires you to look like you're a little bit dopey. Sometimes your brand, your artist brand requires you to look like you're all up in the drugs and alcohol. Sometimes your brand requires you to look like super straight-laced, or whatever your brand requires of you in order to sell your records. I have no judgment of that.
Right.
But on the flip side, you need to be asking, where are my numbers? I want to see my spreadsheets. Did everybody get paid? Where are the accounts? Like, let's figure this out. You know, what is our marketing plan? What's our next campaign? What's our overall strategy? What products are we going to develop to go with this next mini tour or tour? Why are we going to develop those? What is going to be the ROI on that?
So, I mean, there's actually a lot to unpack right there.
It's all right.
Because and you're 100% right, but there's pieces that musicians need to learn along the way. And like you said earlier, that can be learned from books. It can be learned from courses that you take online or at your local community college or whatever. But just it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to go and get an MBA.
No.
But take a couple of basic business courses, understand basic bookkeeping or whatever, some leadership skills, right, for leading a team, and some of those pieces around planning and marketing. So, like in the last 30 to 40 years, there's been a huge shift in the industry.
I know. I love it.
And we are now at this juncture where artists actually have to do more for themselves than ever prior to getting label support.
Yeah.
And even when they have label support, they actually have to do more for themselves than they used to. So things like growing a following on their socials, which for the label, that's like establishing proof of concept, right? In order for them to invest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, now you got to do that first.
Yep.
They won't even look at you unless you have that. It's with, it's the same with authors now too. When you're putting together book proposals, they're just like, oh, how many followers do you have? And it's like, oh, wow. Okay. There we are.
Yeah. So, and things like, taking the reins in, booking their own tours, and at least until they reach a certain level of success, but often for a really long stretch of their career. So there are really some non-musical skills that are important in those elements. We have talked about pieces of that, but do you want to expand on that maybe a little bit?
So let's get a little, because we've been very esoteric, and I know that's my fault. I keep on I'm like a little moth to the esoteric flame. Love to talk about big ideas. So let's get really nitty-gritty.
We're good.
Really nitty-gritty. First of all, understanding business entities and what they are. Like, what is the difference between a sole proprietorship, an LLC, an S Corp, and a corporation?
And in Canada, that's going to be a little bit different.
In Canada, yes.
That's going to be, I don't know,
incorporated?
Yeah.
Well, so you still call it sole. You are Canadian.
In Canada, we've got sole proprietorship, partnership, and incorporation. Right. And it's really just sort of those three.
And in the United States, an LLC can be a single member LLC or a partnership. And then the type of corporation, either whether it's a S Corp, a sub corporation, or a C Corp, a regular corporation. And all these things have to do with your separation level. There's two things. So your separation level from the business money aspect of it, the business aspect of it, and taxes.
Right.
So know that. Know what you're going to be. Depending on what nation you live in, there are also different kinds of taxes that you would or would not have to pay, depending on what your entity is or how much money you make or don't make. Some nations are like Canada and the United States and the places in the UK where your expenses reduce your taxable income. Other places like France, Nope, you pay 25% of your revenue no matter what, doesn't matter what your expenses are. So there's no real like perk to spending more money. But know your tax law for your state, your province, your area, and then the nation on the federal level. Once you know that, you can start thinking about your brand. Just think of any business as this. It's honestly, at its most basic, you only need 3 things to start a business. Only 3 things. You need someone to sell to, so a client, right? Venue. Someone to sell to, a thing to sell, and a way to handle your money. That's it. So start thinking about that. Who do I sell to? Who is my audience? Who am I singing for? And I think young artists, and I don't just mean like physically young, but like people who are new to their artistry or exploring it, they tend to be like, I'm for everybody. Like everybody wants to serve everybody and have everybody love them, right?
Niche down.
You have to. And you have to explore your artistry, and it takes years. Like this isn't like you wake up one day and you're Beyonce 2023 at the Grammys, right? Like you got to start at your destiny. Everybody has a Destiny's Child, and everybody has, you know what I mean? Like, oh, Queen Bee, we love you so much. We just use you for all our examples. I mean, you could say the same thing about Dolly Parton, right? So, who are you creating for? What are your venue sizes? Are you trying to become a corporate gig? Really, are you trying to become signed label and do like international tour? What are you actually trying to do? Who is your audience? Who is your client? Who's going to buy this shit? Then what are they going to buy? And that's where your artistry comes in. That's where your brand persona, where your artist persona, which please should be different than your regular at home washing the dishes persona.
Yes.
For so many reasons, by the way, not just because of like business sense, but also like just mental health.
Yes.
And then also you really lock yourself in if you are only trying to be yourself in an artist persona, because the whole point of entertaining people is to wrap them into the fantasy that the story you are telling. And so sometimes you're going to have to do things that actually you wouldn't do at home, washing your dishes. Good and like for good or ill, I don't care what those things are, but it's like it goes to your kind of artist persona. And to that point, you have to know how to describe your artist persona. So like here's I talk about this with my friend Jess. We kind of giggle a little bit where everyone wants to like, she is an ethereal musician with harps and flowers and rainbows coming through a screechy metal door, right? Like they just try to like make themselves sound really special. And friends, if you're listening, I cannot tell you what a bad idea that is. And here's why. You are inherently special. Your music is inherently special, but those descriptions on Spotify and on Apple and, when they're asking you what category to put yourself in and all of that, and you're doing your self-promotion, you got to put the keywords in the YouTubes and the TikToks and all of this. Those special words do not get you views because nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. So if you can approximate your sound, which we all know is not going to be your sound, of course you're different than everybody else, but know what you're selling. Like Sarah's voice is a wonderful mix of James Taylor and Dolly Parton, who had a love child with Lauryn Hill. I don't know, like anything.
I'll take that.
I mean, hey, wouldn't we all? But it's like, it's there, like your description is there to help other people understand why they might maybe want to listen to you.
Yeah.
So know how to describe your artist persona and your music without trying to be a special snowflake.
It's not unrelated to SEO.
Exactly.
Like, it's basically writing for SEO.
Yes.
So
it's,
you know?
Yes. That's a great way to put it. And then the handling money part.
Yeah.
And that starts out with just how much money do I need to make? And then once you get into a team situation and you have multiple revenue streams and you're managing, all of that kind of situation, that's when you know enough to have the conversation and you trust enough to hire a person to do it for you and then report back to you.
Mm-hmm. And you know enough to understand what they're doing, and you can look at the things and know whether they're screwing you or not.
Yeah.
That's the part that you need to not lose sight of. If you know.
Yes. I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you.
No, go.
I just thought of, if a manager or an accountant or anybody ever says to you, don't worry about it, I got it.
Worry about it.
That is a red flag.
Yeah.
If they say that to you after years and years and years of trusted relationship, and they are assuring you because you're having a freak out and they've never done you wrong and you completely trust them, okay, then you can let them say that. But if you're new to a company or a management or a firm or anything, and they say, don't worry, we've got it covered. And I'm not assuming the worst of them. I'm not saying that they're trying to screw you over, but I'm saying that is a red flag.
Yeah.
And what it tells me is that they're not ready to show up for you in transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're not doing anything wrong, because later down the line, as you start getting more popular and you start making more income and getting more gigs, you will absolutely need that transparency, because you're going to need it for your brand. You're going to need to know what people think, what people are like. You're going to need it just to build the business.
Yeah.
And to build the brand capital. So there's that.
Yeah. And I think also, as you get to a certain level where you are starting to employ a team, there is a different mindset between
100%.
I need to make enough money to fund my life, which is going to cost X amount. Yep. When you do math not in public and figure out what your life needs to, okay, here's what I need to make. That is a different mindset than I need to fund my life and the life of my crew and my XYZ people and my band members. And now you are an employer.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a different thing.
Yeah. So I love that you said that, because I see this in all the team-based businesses that I work with, oftentimes with multi-teacher studios or record studios, recording studios that start to bring on other people to do recording and producing and stuff. Is you're still thinking like an independent business owner or sole proprietorship, and then you have all these like things you think you're going to do different because you're nice or something. Not switching the mindset into the most important thing is that I take care of this business, not that I take care of me. This business, if I take care of this business will take care of the team of which I am on, and most likely the leader or co-leader of. But you switch that mindset. And I think it's important, by the way, when you are a sole prop and when you are solo, that you are very much thinking about your own wants and needs and boundaries. And I think you should be budgeting based on yourself and you. And then when you start to bring on team members, it's got to shift into, how do I make this business sustainable so that it pays me? It pays my team. I personally think it's helpful to kind of ride both sides of that when you are a sole prop, but I think, there's a lot you're doing a lot more when you're a sole prop. So you have to have better boundaries and a better understanding of your own capacity. There's just more, it's more intimate. But if you're one of those artists that's starting to bring on a team, you can't be the person that is like thinking that you're going to like solve your team's money problems the way that you had to solve your own money problems. You can't be the person who thinks, well, I'm going to pay them the right wage, a living wage. And I'm not saying you don't pay people living wages. What I'm saying is if you go gangbusters trying to solve a problem of a team member that is a manifestation of your own money story, you are now not taking care of the company. And the team member is wanting to work with you because they don't want to figure out how to do it on their own. They want to be an employee and trust that you are taking enough care of the company that the company will take care of them.
And that is the wrong order of operations.
Yeah. So oftentimes people get really like, I have to take care of this person, this team member. And they forget that in order to do that, you have to take care of the company and the company culture. That how you create that company culture, checking in, making sure people are resting and rejuvenating. That's a healthy company culture. Making sure that the business is sustainable, that it's paying the right rate at the right time for the right level of service and scope of work so that everybody you're hiring the right people that want what you have and fit the need, and that you are basing your business on roles that are needed in order to fulfill this mission and vision of your artistry rather than, trying to like save the artist planet or something.
Yeah.
And that's a hard shift. I mean, it was a hard shift for me. And what was interesting is like, cause I've been in management of companies and artistic ventures for a long time, but not the owner. Right. So like I would come in and do artistic direction or just help out with a team or consulting. And you're making the same decisions as an owner. But when being an owner now of a team-based business, it's like I knew it was coming. I'm like, I know that I have to shift my mindset. I'm very clear on where I need to go. Like I was so aware of what needed to happen. But then when you're in the muck of it, you're like, oh, this is how my old mindset is manifesting. Oh, this is where I'm getting my fingers in a pie that I should not have. Oh, this is the difference between micromanaging and facilitating and overseeing, right? Like you see all that and you have to give yourself the grace and the room to do that. So like, just know as soon as you start bringing in team members that you're going to up-level your skills. You're going to up-level who you are as a human. And you're going to change. And therefore your artistry is probably going to change a little bit too. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. And you used a phrase a minute ago that I know gets used a lot in like corporate culture. And that is, talking about mission and vision. And I'm curious how much you think it's important for an artist to think in those terms early in their career and then, reassess as it goes on, but about like what their mission and vision is, because I don't think that's something that many people think about in those terms.
Yeah.
I think that's a very like, I don't know, it's way back there somewhere. Maybe I kind of have a vague idea of what I want, but I don't think it's very often thought of in those terms. And I think that if it were, it really informs all the pieces of how you build a company, how you work with your communication skills and strategic planning and all the bits and pieces that go into creating a career from that point forward.
Yeah.
So to me, it actually, as you say that, it was a bit of an aha, like, oh, we should all be doing this. And I don't think we are.
Yeah. I mean, people make vision boards all the time, but they don't connect it to the reality that like your vision board is there to help you make choices.
Yeah.
And that's what in corporate first of all, yes, I think every person, even if they're not an artist, but every person should take 5 minutes to intentionally think about what they actually think their life's mission and vision is.
Mm. Yeah.
Because that'll just open a whole can of worms. But I think this is where artists are really lucky and where they have a leg up on the rest of humanity, is that we already operate from mission and vision. We wouldn't create art if we didn't. So the difference isn't, do I have to come up with a mission and vision? For me, it's more like, can I just take some time and be intentional about voicing it?
Yeah.
And putting it into a framework or some language for myself so that I can check back in.
Yeah.
To make sure I'm still in alignment with this thing that made me become an artist in the first place anyway. Because I don't know any artist that if you really started asking why, they would just be like, I don't know. I don't. I mean, they would the first 3 whys because we all do. Yeah. Every person does. But you are creating art, like listener, friend, you are creating art because you believe somewhere inside of you that it is necessary and that the world has to have it. And there's a reason why they have to have your art.
Yeah.
Again, I think this is a way some artists are really tricked. I think artists get fed the message through media and culture that creating art is about the artist. I want to be famous. I want people to like me. I want to feel good when people are the feedback loop of an audience. I. And I get that. But the people who succeed, the people who wind up getting signed, the people who can make it through the hard, rough spots are the people who also realize that the reason why they need all those things is in order to create impact in the world.
Yeah.
They
say it again for the people in the back.
That's what we do as artists. We create impact in the world. We tell people stories for them when they are too emotionally unavailable to tell them. Yeah. We give them platform to feel.
Yes.
And if you are not clear about your way of doing that, your mission with that, your vision with that, your core values around that, it's going to be real fucking hard for you to keep going when the shit hits the fan and you can't book out gigs for 2 months or 2 years.
Yeah.
Because of the things that happen in the world.
Yes.
To me, it's all wrapped up. Like, it's not either or, it's always both and.